Hello everybody. We're going to now continue wrapping up our solar system project. I am not going to do all of the 9 planets for you, but what I'm going to quickly show you is bits and pieces of information that you might need to complete this project. So I'm just going to remind you a couple of things. You already have an ellipse tool that works in the following manner. You put the first focus, which is the sun, then put the second focus, and then when you pull, you're going to notice your ellipse forms. I'm going to also remind you that this first focus is the sun, so I'm going to call it that so I don't forget it. So what I recommend that you do as you proceed creating elliptical orbits for each of the planets, you create appropriately show hide buttons. So let me just do this with you for Mercury. So let's create a show hide button for the control points of Mercury's orbit. Let's test it. Let's put Mercury here. Let's give some speed to Mercury, edit action buttons, animation. I believe Mercury is quite fast around the sun, so I'm just going to put fast here. You can test it. Again, as it gets closer to the sun, it speeds up, which is a great effect. I will leave it to you if you want to name your planets. The space is going to be very precious soon. Probably eventually when you want to hide those names, but for right now, for clarity, I'm just going to name it. So when you like Mercury, you may decide what kind of a color to give, etc. So let's make Mercury really small, like a dot. Let's make the path of Mercury very thin. Let's create a show hide button for Mercury's path. And what I always recommend, you name things properly because things are going to get very complicated soon. So you may want to say like animate Mercury, hide Mercury orbit, etc. So once you like what you have, and by the way, at this point, you may also want to give some thickness. I think we did that before. I'm just going to quickly remind you how that is done. I construct a circle around the sun by the radius that I have created here. I select the circle, construct its interior, color it something that's like a sun color. Okay. Again, it's always a good idea to name things. So sun radius. But the most important thing I want to show you is this. Once you're creating a system like what we have right now, I recommend when you're creating Venus orbit, do not work on this page, but rather do the following. Go to File, Document Options, and there's an option there called Duplicate an Existing Page. And let me actually also show you, you can select page 1, and you may want to call this Mercury, the page that has just Mercury on it. Okay? And then you might say, add a duplicate of Mercury, and we're going to call this page Venus because we're going to build Venus on top of it. The reason I'm recommending this is if during your constructions you realize you made a mistake of some sort, it is very hard to debug a very complex system with all the planets, all the moons, etc. You could always go back and say, oh, I got into trouble when I was doing Saturn, and beyond Saturn you can fix. So let's create Venus so you can see how it would look like. Remember, the sun is always the first focus. So the sun, I'm going to put my second focus somewhere here. And I'm going to create the second orbit like that. Again, these points, I might want to create a show hide button for them. And again, it's always a good idea. The original one was called show Mercury orbit points. And now let's call this show and hide show Venus orbit points. So in this fashion, you will be able to, let's make the path again thin. You will be able to create a system that is organized, that is pretty nicely organized. Now let's make Venus here, but let's make sure that it is slightly bigger, so it's at least more visible. I'm gonna name it Venus so I remember. Venus. Let's create a animation button for Venus. So let's have it go at I don't know, medium speed for right now is probably good enough. I'm going to eventually show you how to condense all of your, let's name this, by the way, animate Venus button. I'm going to show you how to condense all of your buttons into a single button. So with a single button, you can animate your whole system. Okay, but right now let's just do it separately. Mercury turns, Venus turns around the sun. Okay. Alrighty. Now I'm going to very quickly create one more. So document options, add a duplicate of Venus. I'm going to call it this time Earth. Now observe my earlier works are still there. Mercury, Venus, and now Earth is a duplicate of an existing page that I'm going to just keep working. So here is the Earth, the ellipse tool. I'm opening, and then we do all the usual stuff we have done before. Okay. So let's create a show hide button. So let's call it hide Earth orbit points. Okay, let's have the path to be thin again. Let's create a let's create the Earth. Let's make the Earth bigger. Maybe let's make it medium size. Okay. At this point, let's create an animation button for it. Let's make it go sort of slower. Let's name our point, the animation point to animate Earth. You will remember how to make the moon orbit, so I'm going to quickly remind you. So you create a segment, you select the Earth, construct circle by center radius. You put the moon there. And you may want to make the moon much smaller. Let's make it dot-like. Let's name what things are. So this is the Earth. This point right here is the moon. Okay. You may want to make the moon orbit. So moon orbit is controlled by that. You may want to make it smaller because when you come to the important parts, you don't want it to be, so animate Venus, animate Mercury, animate Earth. So here's a 3-planet system, and we did not create a moon animation yet, so let me do that. So create a animation button for the moon. And let's make it go really fast, and actually even faster. Let's put there 4 for a high speed. Animate moon. At this point, it's probably a good idea for me to show you how to condense all of these buttons, these animation buttons. So I'm gonna, for clarity, bring them all here. So I have my animate Mercury, animate Venus, animate Earth and Moon. All of these are together. Let me just stop them. So the way you do that is this: you select them all. Remember, selection of a button is done from the left corner of the button. When you selected all the buttons, you can go to the action buttons from the edit menu again, and there's something called presentation tool. I would actually recommend you do this once the whole system is finished, but I will not finish the system, so I'm just gonna quickly show you how it works. You could press these buttons simultaneously, sequentially, etc. You could decide, you could read all these options that Sketchpad gives you. But I'm going to just accept that. I'm going to say something like animate the system. Okay, and observe when I press this button, the presentation button, all of these start being animated at once. So that's how at the end of the day you're going to end up animating everything. Alrighty, the last thing I want to show you, and actually I'm gonna delete this presentation button because I want to also add Mars here. So go File, Document Options, add a duplicate of the Earth page, let's call it Mars. And the reason I'm going to show you how to do Mars, and let's actually give ourselves a little bit more space here, is so that you will understand how to put two moons around a planet. You know, you might know that Mars actually has two moons, Phobos and Deimos. So I'm going to show you, and you can almost guess how this is done. It's quite easy. So let's create our Mars orbit. So here is the sun, the first focus again. I go out to put the second focus, pull it out, and I'm going to put that. I'm going to create show hide buttons if you ever want to change your mind about and tweak. So let's call this button hide Mars orbit points. These are the points that determine the eccentricity of the orbit of the Mars. Okay, let's make the path thin again. Alrighty, so here is Mars. Let's make it, let's see, let's make it medium size for right now. You could, by the way, do all kinds of coloring things. You might say, yeah, I want my Earth to be blue. You can definitely do that, but Mars is the red planet. So here it is. Let's call it Mars. Let's actually do this. Let's create an animation button for Mars. Actually, let me show you something. You could actually create the Mars with its planets, with its moons, and then create a singleton button for the Mars system. Last time I did the Earth and the Moon separately because I knew that I was going to merge them with the presentation button. But let me show you this as an alternative. So what you need to do is you're going to create two segments. One of them is going to be larger than the other. One is the orbit of Phobos, the other one is the orbit of Deimos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this first smaller radius, then Mars, construct the first orbit, and then I'm going to do that again, Mars, and then the second segment, construct my second orbit. You can adjust these as you please. You don't want them to be too large. But now you can see what's going to happen. I'm going to put the two moons, Phobos and Deimos, and you could decide the sizes of these, etc. So I'm going to make these much smaller. Maybe let's make them dot-like. Okay. But now let me show you how to create a single button for Mars system. So Mars and its moons, I select edit action buttons animation. Now it's going to ask me multiple questions. How do you want Mars to go? I believe we said Mars just like Earth. Let's have it go slow. And then let's have the, and again, you could be as accurate as you want with this. Let's have the moons go fast, and then the, let's see, the outer one, let's have it go really fast. Let's make it 5 or something. And then the inner, so the outer moon, let's have it just fast. Okay? And you could test it, and always a good idea, you create something, let's name this. So let's call this Animate Mars System. So we'll remember that it is actually a collection of things. So here is the Mars system being animated. Okay? Alrighty, so again, let's select all of our buttons. Let's go to Edit, Action Buttons, Presentation. Let's create a singleton button here. Let's call it, you could get fancy here, like Roll the Solar System or something like that. Let's actually do that. Roll the Solar System, even though it's not complete. That's how the final thing is going to look like. So here you have a pretty complicated system. Okay. Alrighty. Couple of things we're going to talk about in the next video, which will be probably the last one I'm going to have. I'm going to show you how to create the asteroid belt, to have an exciting asteroid belt here. I'm going to also show you in that last one how to color the backgrounds, etc., so things look believable. But you can already see this is a pretty, you can see this clockwork beginning to form here. Some really exciting things are beginning to happen. All right, I hope you had a good time. Please keep working and enjoy.